Today is March 2024, and today we're going to talk about the golf course. The golf course has got a long history out on the golf course road, what's called now, and Peter and Harvey have got some background from times away, a long time ago till now. So Peter, you could start with your.
Okay, I've got some notes here that I'll read out, but it was way back when there was a gang of guys that used to travel to Geraldton because there was no golf course here, right?
Right, yeah.
And they'd go up there in early morning and they'd golf all day, right?
That's for sure.
54 holes and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
But anyway,
yes.
then they decided it would be nice to have their own course. So in the spring of 1958, Spence Craigie, Wilf Drysdale, Henry White, and Larry Dunville began searching for land.
Wow.
So Mr. Sallow, who owned the butcher store in Nipigon, had some land across from the Beaver Valley Trailer Park, which he was selling, and they figured maybe that was an option, but somebody else had bought it 2 days before, and he didn't want to part with it. So then I guess Bill McKinley from the Woodlands office in Nipigon, these names are
Yeah.
like I never knew them,
Oh, I know him. Yeah.
but he wanted maybe suggested that they talked to Mr. Rojo. That would be Gust, and to see if he was going to sell the dairy farm, and there was Gust, and then there was Arvo, his son, right?
Yes, one of the sons. Yeah.
Yeah, and they struck a deal to buy the property. They took a look at the property, and a meeting was arranged by Bill with Rojo, Spence Craigie, Henry White, Wilf Drysdale, and Larry Dunville, whereupon an agreement to purchase was made and signed on the hood of McKinley's car under the array of a flashlight at the farm in the evening of July 1960. So can you imagine those guys out there negotiating a deal over the hood of a car?
Okay, so just describe for now people exactly where the Rojo farm was.
Well, it was the dairy farm that was just in between Nipigon and Red Rock, I guess. I don't know.
And at one time, that would have been the highway through. That area would have been one of the main roads going through that area.
At
that
one
they had.
time, yeah.
Yes.
One time it was.
Yes, at one
Yeah,
time it was.
okay.
So
But,
Rojo's had that
But
farm
not
for a while.
when the golf course started.
No.
The highway was,
Already changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at one time it was. So they've been there a long time.
Okay, the first executive was formed. President Spence Craigie, Vice Presidents Larry Dunville and Harold Jones. Secretary was Henry White. Treasurer was Wilf Drysdale. And their directors were Gordon Dunville,
my brother.
yeah, your brother, and let me see, Lloyd Stansel was there. Bruce Ward and Bert Douglas and Bob Ray, I guess. So
Yeah.
that's the first executive then.
Right.
Let me see now.
When you go over those names, it's interesting that so many were from Red Rock.
Oh yes, this
so
was
many were from Red Rock
Oh, for
when
sure.
that first started, right?
that's that was
yes.
they were the driving force, the driving
Right.
members. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see now. I apologize for reading this, but
That's okay.
there's so much stuff. A well-known golfer, Paul Stockaluk, and his assistant brother Emil from Fort William Municipal Golf Course were approached about laying out the course for us, and which they did at no cost. Way back when.
Their
Lots.
names were well known, and they came down here lots. I've got pictures, I think,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
them. They supported the golf course a lot. They
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
did.
So everybody got together and was brushing and doing everything, and The club's first and only pro was Julie Stockeluk, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And his wife Nellie and son Billy and daughter Patty arrived, and they lived in the farmhouse and operated the pro shop and the lunch counter out of the living room. The basement was the locker room back then. Now, do you
Yeah.
remember that, those days?
Right, yeah.
All
The
right.
old house and the
Yeah,
locker room was down in the basement.
yeah. Let me see now. There was a 61 executive, much the same guys. That worked out pretty good. And Larry Dunville called it a dream come true,
I guess so, eh?
and it sure was. Yeah.
So interesting, though, Harvey. Like in those days, where would those guys have, I wonder, got their interest in golf when there was no golf around here? Everybody played ball and everybody played hockey, but it's interesting to me where all of a sudden they got the passion for golf from.
Well, there was only a few of us really that used to go to Geraldton and Thunder Bay and play golf.
Okay.
Some of them just took it up, and or they played years ago, and
Okay, it's just interesting when I think about that when there is no facility, how do people get the passion for doing that?
started out with a pretty small crew, you know.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Sorry, Peter.
No problem. Yeah. I just
like Lloyd Stansel now, he's in Red Rock now. He was from the first executive there, and he's my neighbor there at the senior complex in Red Rock.
Okay.
all right. All right. Just on a note, more on a side note on the golf course, and we'll talk more about it later. But we had a 50th anniversary celebration a few years back, and let me see here now. Let me see here. I have notes. Honest, I do. Oh yeah, here we go. It was Jim Rojo was the grandson
Right.
of Gus, right? Do you remember Jim?
Jim is the one that's married to Faye Johnson.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he was at this 50-year reunion, and he made a comment at that. And he says, "It is nice to see this property being used so well. I'm glad to see everyone here. And on behalf of the Rojo family, I thank you for keeping the property going." So
Okay.
that kind of sums up
Yeah.
the Rojo
Yeah,
dairy farm.
For sure. Because it's a pretty extensive piece of property that you were fortunate.
They
When
were
you think of the bush that's around there, and you've got a fairly extensive piece of property there.
Glenda, when you asked me to be a part of this interview, I was kind of reluctant, as you probably are aware. I was, due to a couple factors, over 60 years of history in existence,
Yeah.
and there were and still are so many people who made the course possible
Right.
and contribute to its current success. To leave out people is
That's right.
is a sin,
Right.
and just about impossible to not do so.
I know.
I mean, just so many people, right, Harvey?
Right.
And
And that happens to most of the people we talk to. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, the name will pop up,
Yeah.
and they'll mention it, and then they get home and they say, "Gosh, I forgot this person."
yeah.
But at least we're getting some of the names out for
Well-
people who will watch this video.
Well, it's interesting that the beginning,
Right.
they get those names, the guys,
Right.
you know,
It
like,
is.
like Harvey and everybody in there, right?
Because people who watch it may be relatives of theirs,
Yeah.
Peter, which
yeah.
means that history is being preserved. Then
That's
they are
right.
getting recognized for the work that they did at that time.
So let me continue there, like everybody did their part.
Does it say anywhere, Peter, about how many people would have been involved when they first started?
Not the number of people,
And
but,
was it called North Shore Golf Course?
well, they had a contest.
Oh, they had a
They had a
okay.
contest, and that's how they come up with
Okay.
the thing. But one by one, farm buildings started disappearing,
Yeah.
and first to go were the two equipment sheds to make room for the new clubhouse, right? As the farmhouse burned down in the spring of '69, the hayloft of the barn was removed and a flat roof was put on, and it served as a locker room in the equipment
Right.
thing, right? Harvey can address that, right? In '81, the milk processing building was moved as well, and a well was drilled. And with the abundance of water, they were able to get the course in pretty good shape, right? In '86, the Banning brothers, Dave and Mark, erected a Quonset hut, and that became our equipment
Equipment.
shed, yeah.
In those early years, Larry, who would have kept the greens going and cut the lawns cut? Just the volunteer players?
You're looking at them right here.
Oh, looking at them, okay.
I did it for quite a bit.
Yeah.
My
I was just thinking.
wife was clubhouse, and I was the groundskeeper. Plus, I worked at the mill.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
And I didn't have no crew. I had my sons and volunteers,
Right.
and
Because that's the maintenance of something is
oh yeah,
is one of
big
the
job.
biggest parts, biggest jobs, right? Right.
Yeah.
And I have more on that in a little bit here. Harvey was he was a one-man show out there. That's why he's recognized as, Larry's got the ball rolling and Harvey kept it going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had even a nickel for every hour Harvey spent on the tractor grooming that course,
Right.
I
I
mean,
used to cut the greens, all the greens, in one day.
Wow.
And we only had, at that time, we only had 2 gang wars.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a big job.
Right, because if the maintenance isn't done, you lose the membership.
Oh, it definitely
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And so it would have been
Yeah.
a big job, that's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And-
Harvey can talk about the old clubhouse. That's an interesting story, right?
Oh, yeah.
It was right
Okay.
there where there's a tee off there for number 1 right now. But
Yeah.
maybe you can talk about that. How we used to have to prop it up. Didn't the guys from the mill come out?
Oh, yeah. Well, we had pretty good crew there, and we ran the bar, make money for the golf course. And
That's when Harvey and June took over that little thing. I'll never
Yeah.
forget. June cooking like crazy, and the bar, and I mean there were some major tournaments we had.
ran it for quite a while.
Oh, yeah, and then
Wife and I.
for sure, and the kids too.
My kids were just young, but Larry's boys helped. And,
It
Yeah,
helps to come from a big family
yeah.
because you end up with your family
Yeah.
being volunteered, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
my brother Larry had 2 boys, and
Yeah.
I had 3.
yeah,
And then the other thing that I think you have to recognize is that you had the mill behind you
Yeah, we had
when you needed things, right? If I
well,
remember
they
correctly.
helped us with equipment and that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And repairs,
Right, I did hear that lots of times
Yeah.
that
Oh,
that
they
they
helped
were
us
there.
out a lot.
Even Herman remembers that.
Yeah.
People taking pieces of equipment in and
Oh,
the
yeah.
guys welding it or putting it together. So that was a big help
Yeah.
financially.
Big money saver, that's for sure.
Right,
That's
right.
got the golf course really going, actually.
I think so. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's appreciated.
The mill
that.
was very,
Right.
very supportive.
yeah. There wasn't a lot of money to do any
Oh, yeah.
buy equipment and do the repairs. It wasn't for the mill.
Mill used to sharpen the moors and everything for us during the winter, and stuff that had to be done, maintenance. And,
Yeah.
Then I think after that, when Ontario grants come available back then, and I think it was Grant Meikle, the local dentist, I think he had some input into that. and we were able to build a present-day clubhouse.
Okay.
And that was a major factor too, that kept us going pretty well. I think we've got that. 3. I've broken it down into segments.
That's
And
okay.
the first one being is getting the property and
Right.
the clubhouse and the history and all of the efforts from all the people. Then we had the clubhouse, we had the equipment shed for the bandings put up, and then we got going pretty good, right?
Did Mark Banning play golf?
Oh yes, yeah.
I've forgotten. I know Dave did,
Oh yeah.
but I had forgotten if Mark played.
Yeah,
They
sorry.
both played, yeah.
So
Yeah.
they were both involved in it, which
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the summers of '91 and '92 proved to be very wet ones, and the course was often unplayable after the rain.
oh,
And it was very frustrating to the membership as we started to think of things we could do to drain some key problem areas. In '93, we attempted to fix up some problem areas during the course of the summer, used up considerable monies trying to do so, and not much success. One of the major areas we tried to drain was around the green on number 3 hole back then, and which is number 5 now, right? Yeah, yeah. And we had some new faces around the course that year, and 2 of them were Keith and John Harris from
oh,
Dorian,
Dorian, right?
and they own Sturgeon Timber, and they saw a need to help and offered to bring in some equipment. Keep going through this, to get in chronological order is a little difficult, but Keith and John asked me to meet them at the Nipigon Husky for breakfast. So I went there, and I have to tell you, it was the most memorable breakfast I've ever had, because they slid an envelope over to me, and then a second envelope. And when you opened them up, it was $20,000 worth of work in kind from John and Keith, and then they brought in another great guy, Johnny Harris. Give me a minute here now. And then Height Timber come in with $10,000. So all of a sudden we had $30,000,
Worth of
just
jobs.
$30,000 kind of deal, because we were trying really hard to get the course playing. Harvey, you can allude to when we tee off on number 6 now, or the old number 4, the balls would plug, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you'd spend time trying to find your ball. Sometimes you could find it, sometimes you couldn't. And then we'd have to shut the course down, right?
So I just want to clarify that, Peter. Then the Harrises and that offered you the cash or the work?
The machinery, the work.
The work.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
And,
And did they come and do it?
oh yeah, they,
Oh, they
yeah,
did.
they will. Yeah, it was currently number 1. There's a big stand of poplar trees behind the green. It was a short par 4, right?
Number 1.
Yeah. And or sorry,
Number
it'd be number 7 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's number 1 now. It used to be number 7. That's the way that worked, right?
Right.
Right. So I can remember Harvey's wife June. She was in the clubhouse looking out towards the green, and there was just a burst of colors where Keith Harris was on a D7. He was knocking down those poplar trees, and June was saying, "What's going on out there?" She says, "Look at that trees falling," and it was kind of funny that day. But they were doing that, and this is before we had the grant.
Oh.
So we were just trying to maybe clean up the drainage and make the course a touch longer. And this what's number 1 now, it was if we could make that a little longer, it would toughen up the course a little bit.
So when it first started, Harvey, how many holes?
Well, we started, well, seems to me when we first started playing, we only had 6 holes or something
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that.
Okay. Wow.
But didn't take long before we had 9 holes going, and a lot of them have changed now. Like the old first number 1, and that's not there anymore. That's driving range, and there was changes made there. Number
Right.
2 was changed. And
I just wondered what it started with, so that's interesting then.
yeah,
Expanding.
yeah. It was just as we went, we got it up to 9 holes. That
Right.
was the thing. It didn't take long. There was a lot of good volunteers, I'll
Right.
tell you.
Yeah, and with what few funds we had depleting rapidly due to the drainage issues, reduced playing time and wet weather and the declining memberships, the mill downsized back then too, right?
Pardon?
The mill downsized a little bit back then too.
Yeah, it did
Yeah, and that
some.
impacted the membership a little bit, I think, didn't it? But it was apparent something had to be done. So I went to some various government agencies, and most notably the local economic development office, and got a hold of Bruce Pritchard. He was the economic development officer
Right.
for Nipigon. And Bruce had just received a copy of ironically, it happened at that time, he just received a copy of a FedNor study on golf in northern Ontario. And the timing of our visit had potential. And the criteria outlined in that study was minimum course length and practice area and putting green, and had to be within an hour's drive of a major center. So that's where municipal golf course come in too, right? And we knew that we had a good project, and Bruce got us in touch with Marlene Wright from the Ministry of Cultural Tourism and Recreation. And myself and Grant and Bruce and Marlene walked the course in the early spring of '94 and basically reinforced the need to support the work that needed to be done. We outlined the potential and got support. So it was great. I probably shouldn't say this, but Grant and Pete broke out a little bottle of rum there just to celebrate
I guess so.
a little
We're
bit.
celebrating.
And we actually spent a lot of time, our wives put up with us, but we were plotting just how much money we could raise on the 50-50 deal
Okay.
with the government funding and what we could do to get the most out of the course, right? We thought if we got $30,000, we could do $60,000 worth of work to the course, which might include drainage and extending holes 7, 8, and 9, and up the course reading. And remember, John and Keith Harris, they were very interested in the golf scene, and I'll repeat myself here. They met with me at the Husky with a written pledge to do $20,000 worth of labor, and also had a spoken with John Haidt, who had given them a letter pledge for $10,000. So all of a sudden we had $30,000 of work in kind.
Right.
And so what happened then is we figured if we could redo the mortgage a little bit to the tune of about $40,000, it really wouldn't hurt us too bad. Imagine we're now up to $70,000.
Okay.
So that was a pretty good deal. So Bruce and Marlene worked and reworked the monies until we came up with a final amount of $124,700. And because Bruce and Marlene did all they could possibly do to help us, we got the funding for the entire project, which was a total of $249,400.
Wow.
Just doubled what we had, right?
Right.
With the work in kind and the matching monies from the government.
And those days you could use the matching
Yeah.
money, right?
Yeah, and so in the early spring of '94, in comes the Harris boys and John Height, and the machinery arrived, and things really started to happen. We were starting to turn the course into a bona fide, championship course, right? And it soon became apparent that we could use the expertise of a golf design architect to fit in the required layout, according with the ministry. And Grant Meikle had heard that Fort William Country Club had hired an architect, and he was installing wash sod. And we invited him down, and he went over our course, and he come up basically with the same outlay that we had. But he eliminated the old number one and number two, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we had to get some more greens. So the new course was charted out, and the cost of each new green was about $22,000 each. And he also laid out the sand traps, and we had to start building, and things. We need somebody to build a course. He was just the architect, right? So in comes Abe Epp from Pembina Landscaping in Winnipeg and the Sturgeon Timber crew, and he kind of directed it, and away we went. Wash sod was brought in from Ottawa, and the new greens were laid with the capable assistance of volunteers from the North Shore Golf Club. We were going to have professional greens at last, and the underlying thing there is anything that's been done at that golf course over those 60 plus years has been done largely by volunteers, right?
Quite a bit, yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for the volunteers.
Oh yeah. I mean, we just had a terrific, or still do have a bunch of guys. John Tate was hired to put in some field drainage, and Harvey will appreciate this, on fairways number 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9, and that he did. Tate's machine disemboweled the fairways and left trenches and mounds of earth so big that a half-ton truck could not drive over them. And that goes back to when you teed off and your ball would sink and you couldn't find the
Disappear,
ball.
right?
Yeah, right. So I can still remember Harvey driving in, and he said, "What is this?" Remember that? When they ripped up the fairways, dug those big trenches? But they laid the drainage pipe through it, and man, did that ever solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
Let me see. Irrigation was another concern that we addressed. And over the course of the winter, I was kind of fearful of not being able to finish what we had started. And it was eased somewhat by the fact that we had more services in kind
Okay.
of in the bank kind of deal, right? And thanks again to Sturgeon Timber, John Height Timber, and newcomer Jim Nichols, we began an application for phase 2 of the North Shore expansion project. I thought maybe that we'd be able to get $30,000, but Bruce Pritchard, he was amazing guy, was quick to point out that we should go for a matching grant. Mm-hmm. So I guess the end result of that was we were rewarded with a grant of $81,000. So you take that $81,000 and add it to the $249,000, and we come up with the 300 and I forget the total number, 300 and,
A lot of money spent there.
yeah, 325, 300.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's basically the expansion project,
Wow.
and it served us well.
And I guess that's the truth. The basic thing is what you need today. You have to have a good base to keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we've got that covered. The next section is going to be I got a hold of Trillium people again through Marlene, and we needed some equipment. So we went to the Trillium board, and we put together Sarah Lewis from here, Nipigon's Economic Development girl, and she was amazing as well. She without her, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But we put together a presentation, and as a result, we were awarded $63,000, and the deal there was the maximum you could get was $125,000. That was the maximum award that grant that the Trillium would put out. We got 63,900. The Trillium board come to the golf course to do the presentation, and of course it was pretty neat. And one of the board members stood up and told everyone, he said that they had not seen an application so well done, and they were just amazed by the volunteers. Like, we had pictures of like 24, 28 guys sitting around the green, punching the greens out, eh? And they said, we wanted to give you the whole $125,000, but we're in the last quarter, and there's no money left. That's all the money that's left.
Wow.
And they said, so here you go. Put in an application next year for the other half. They said they were tickled. So we treated them to a game of golf, but we got 3 walking greens mowers. I used John Deere greens aerator, which really helped a lot. We got a 3-point hitch on the fairway aerator that's still in use today, I think. A John Deere Gator and a John Deere lawn tractor, 54-inch deck. And Waseda used triplex vertical reels. So anyway, we spent the money on equipment, and it saved a lot of time and effort from the guys. They were able to get that done real well.
Well, the grants were there for the
Just-
taking, and it's just, you're right, Peter, to get the applications in, eh?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
get them worded right, but,
So as the years passed, met with a lot of success, and then all of a sudden we come up to 50 years. So we decided that we'd have a 50th anniversary deal at the golf course, and it was just a major success. I mean, people to this day are still talking about it, but people all jumped in and gave out prizes, like went from golf sets to golf clubs to balls, everything. And Harvey was in it. Him and Carl arranged the tournament, right?
Aye.
Yeah, and
Carl Sodergan,
yeah,
okay?
yeah. We had just a great time there. Chick McCabe
All right.
and Sandy Harbinson were the 2 media people for the golf
Well,
course.
you had lots of support from Sandy.
Oh yeah,
That was in the paper all the
yeah,
time,
we'll
eh?
get, yeah, for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah.
He was always putting
You
articles in.
didn't want to miss Q out there on Wednesday nights when Sandy was around, because it was in the paper real quick.
Yeah,
But I think Chick probably wrote this whole Gazette about the
50th anniversary.
50th anniversary, and Harvey will know these fellas. 51 years ago, Red Rock had its very first recreation director who was present for this celebration, Al Miller.
Al Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where-
And believe it or not, the celebration also brought together 2 golfers, one from Valcaron near Sudbury and one from Dryden, who hadn't seen one another for 51 years.
Oh,
51 years. So that was Andre Gallant and John Filowich, Johnny the Barber.
Yeah.
51 years, and they met at this deal. Let me see. We had Bruce Heyer spoke a few months, wishing everyone well and congratulated the members and club on their 50th anniversary. Michael Gravel couldn't make it. I guess I created a few goosebumps with that highlight of introducing Jim Rojo, actually the grandson of the man Gus Rojo, who had sold the dairy farmland to the golfers, right? And like I mentioned, he was really glad to see the family thing keep going. I asked Larry Dunville to come up, and one of the founders, to the front to present some history, the Stocklocks, and early beginnings. And he only had one pro, Julie Stocklock, with his wife Nellie and their 2 children, I guess. If I'm repeating myself, it's just hard to keep it all in order. Let me see here now. Paul, Steve, Emil, and Julie had Larry, Henry, White, and Spence Craigie, Wolf Drysdale. They had a little contest amongst them, and it was for a glass of gin, I think, if they missed a shot. I guess I asked Larry turned around and asked me, he says, Pete, how long have I got? How long can I talk? And
Oh, we're down to 2 minutes again here.
okay, and I'm sorry to take it so long, but it was $25 to become a member then, and the volunteer members were a very important part of the club. Larry mentioned his brother Harvey and wife June running the canteen, and Harvey was groundskeeper for quite a while. We've covered that. One year there was no money, so the wives of the executive pitched in and ran the canteen. Just a note here is Harvey is still volunteering to this day, and that's
Okay.
pretty neat.
Okay, relate that, Harvey, now, because I was thinking, those many years ago, people didn't have golf carts. So where did you get your first golf cart from?
Well, I actually went to see my son in Fort McMurray, and on the way home, I had a half-ton truck then, and I stopped in Calgary, and the wife and I picked up a golf cart, brought it back with me. And that was the first one on the golf course.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, because I'm thinking it was all walk, walk, walk
Oh,
in those early days, eh?
Yeah, well, when we did the course over, it was much more tedious, a lot more harder to walk the course.
Right.
So then Harvey started it, and everybody said, hey, that's the answer. So everybody started getting golf carts.
Golf carts, right. It's made a difference, I would think, to some older people being able to go out
Definitely.
and golf, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So now, is there anybody that still walks the course?
Oh, yes.
Well, there's a
Okay.
few.
A few.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple. Yeah, there are.
Okay, okay. I didn't know because I'm
Some of
not,
them even have carts, and just once in a while they'll walk just for the exercise,
right, right.
Or they'll walk 9 holes and then take their cart and drive for the next 9.
Right.
They play 18 holes.
Okay. Now tell me the difference between when you first started hiring for summertime, were you get grants, Peter, or you had to raise money for people to work in the summer?
No, that was the end of our grants. we
okay.
had gone to the well a few times, all right, but we were doing all right. So it was maybe if we had the money in the account, that's what from our membership fees,
Okay,
and that
okay.
kind of helped us out.
Were you ever able to hire students for the summer?
Oh yes,
At the golf course?
and not so much us hiring them, but Red Rock Indian Band would send out 3 kids every summer.
Yeah.
All right, and they were a godsend, and plus we had help from the mills, and we were able to have the students
Right,
program for the summer.
right. That's
Yeah,
that's good.
that's a good point.
Keeps it going then.
Yeah.
Right.
Then let's go back to this celebration that we had, this 50th years. Ken Frisky was the club president then, and we, as a committee, we decided to do something with our club room, and we agreed that it would be really nice and appropriate at this time for a very special presentation. And we renamed the club room the Dunville Club Room. And there's the sign still exists there today, and there's a picture of it there. Harvey and Larry graciously accepted the plaque, and Larry had earlier alluded to how much the Dunvilles guys helped so much, and if it weren't for all the work that they did, we wouldn't have what we have today.
Right.
So thanks to Harvey, and
Thank you.
for sure. Let me see. Again, we had T-shirts for sale, all kinds of sponsors. Harvey explained the schedule and the scrambles for the 3 days. It was pretty good. It filled up every day, which was good. And I mentioned the sponsors and how we had total cooperation from everyone, with the major sponsor being RBC, Dominion Securities, was Sean Kunis, and realizing Sean was so helpful, Pete decided to continue with the celebration plans. As I might have backed off if Sean had encouraged me. He come up with the $10,000 hole-in-one thing.
Wow.
And all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and the thing is, all these sponsors, everybody knows it, but they weren't only sponsors. They were really good friends.
Right.
We got
Right.
so many friendships over that. Brent Lemieux and Pino Ray and three youths from the Red Rock band, Sterling Lesperance, Jean-Marc Fortier and Carlos Burkle. They were out there every summer, so that was good. Okay, we're winding down here, group. Let me see here. After that, we had comments from people saying this happens every 50 years. Make it happen every year, so everybody can get together, and
lot of work,
we'll support us.
Right. A lot of work
Yeah.
for every year. For
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
For sure.
So basically, I alluded earlier to it's difficult to really do this presentation because there's so many people, so many heroes
Right.
in that golf course, and Bruce Pritchard and Marlene Wright are Brophy now, John and Keith Harris, John Height, Jim Nichols, John Zechner, Dave and Mark Banning, Sandy Harbinson and Chuck McCabe, of course. People couldn't wait to get their hands on the Gazette to read about the
Right,
golf and
right.
column. John Watson, the architect, Bob Reed, give us some input. He looked after our greens, or kind of mentored the greens. Of course, Harvey and Larry and Grant and Neil Seegers. So we had a pretty exciting golf course story.
Okay, just tell one other little thing people will allude to now is how you then got involved with the cross-country skiing, because your area is part of that, isn't it, in one corner of your golf course?
Yeah, it's a separate entity from
Oh,
the
it's a
golf
separate
course. It's
one
got
from
nothing,
there
nothing,
now.
nothing to do with us.
Okay, I thought at first
No.
that they used to do some skiing
No,
on
no,
the golf course.
no. They're a separate entity altogether. Again, we had this little thing. I don't know if anybody's interested in it, but it's in summation, it says an ode to golf. This is probably old hat for a lot of people, but in my hand I hold a ball, white and dimpled, rather small. Oh, how bland does it appear, this harmless-looking little spear. By its size I could not guess the awesome strength it does possess. But since I fell beneath its spell, I've wandered through the fires of hell. My life has not been quite the same since I chose to play this game. It rules my mind for hours on end, a fortune it has made me spend. It made me curse and made me cry. I hate myself and want to die. It promises a thing called par if you can hit it straight and far. To master such a tiny ball should not be very hard at all. But my desires the ball refuses and does exactly as it chooses. It hooks and slices, dribbles and dies, or disappears before my eyes. Often it will have a whim to hit a tree or take a swim. With miles of grass on which to land, it finds a tiny patch of sand. Then has me offering up my soul, if only it would find the hole. It made me whimper like a pup, and swear that I will give it up, and to drink to ease my sorrow, but the ball knows I'll be back tomorrow.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, well that's history, and now we've recorded the people, Peter, who were involved at the beginning of it. So that's one of the reasons we're doing the interviews, is to preserve that, so that people recognize those people.
Yeah, and as I was putting this together, I was thinking, if we didn't have this opportunity today, then those names would never surface.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
They, with the exception of,
That's right.
probably
And-
from Larry down to the present day or up to the present day, everybody's aware of. But even now, our membership is really doing well. We have juniors.
I was just going to ask you about the juniors.
The juniors are our future, of course.
Right.
And they're getting involved in the executive. They're getting involved in tournaments. And it bodes well for the future.
Right.
But none of these kids know.
The history.
They don't know, Larry very well, or Harvey, or Pete. I mean, it's kind of neat to have those names.
Yeah, it is. It's really important. That's one of the reasons that I'm interested in this, and so it's not just the golf. I'm looking at how do we get all those ball players together, Harvey? Because I'm talking to Lindsay Manila, and he's saying, there's so many who play ball, but nobody's got the history of that. And it's the same with the hockey. Everybody plays hockey, but nobody knows that one of the people that started that was Chick Mahoney for junior hockey. So it's that kind of thing that we need to preserve, right?
Well, if you mention ball, you got this guy sitting right beside
Well,
me.
that's what I'm saying. When I look at the people from Red Rock, really involved in a lot of things. So both communities have supported all of those sports.
Yeah.
And it's important that we record that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks, Kristen.